Hello and welcome to this month's Insight. Are you a good listener? When conversing with a friend, do you pretend to listen but think about something else? Are you mentally preparing your reply while the other person speaks? At a business meeting, do you give only part-time attention to what's being said? Or do you hear the speaker's words and keep aware of his or her body language? Maybe even taking notes on what to remember or ask questions about later. To some degree, you probably listen in all these ways, depending on the circumstances. During the communication process, we all listen at one of three levels. With the correct listening skills, you can move from being a passive non-listener at level 3 to becoming an active, understanding listener at level 1. Madelyn Burley-Allen is an expert on the art of listening. She'll help you master this essential but often neglected component of communication. With her productive ideas for improving listening skills, you'll be able to deal better with conflict, handle emotional situations, and solve both personal and professional problems. Madelyn Burley-Allen is an author, seminar leader, and founder of Dynamics of Human Behavior, a nationally recognized organization which specializes in communication improvement, organizational development, and leadership training. She's taught her techniques to the U.S. Army and Navy, as well as many private sector corporations like IBM and DuPont. And now, here's Madelyn Burley-Allen on the art of listening.
Imagine this. If because of poor listening habits, each of the 100 million workers in the United States made just one $5 mistake a year, the cost would be more than $500 million. Yet poor listening habits waste a lot more than just money. People's time and emotional energy are thrown into the trash when they don't get the attention they deserve. But you can learn to be a better listener by paying attention to yourself and other people. You might get along better with your family and your friends, and you will probably perform better in your work. You see, good listening builds a sense of team spirit and a feeling of trust among people working together. If you follow the guidelines I'm going to give you, you'll have a much better understanding of your world, and you will succeed by listening. We're not talking about hearing. Hearing is a natural process, the process of sound waves on our eardrums. People hear everything that's said to them. Here's what listening is. First, it's letting the speaker know you're really interested in what she's saying. Secondly, it's taking in that information, both the speaker's words and the way she's speaking, without passing judgment on the speaker. Last, good listening means you encourage the speaker to go on, usually with short statements indicating you understand and you want to hear more. Listening is a higher cognitive process than hearing. Listening takes your attention as well as your intention in order to be done well. You see, you can't help it here. You have to work at listening. Each of us has something going for us when it comes to listening. We spend all of our days communicating. But look at this. Of all the time we spend communicating with other people, 40% of that time is spent listening. 35% is spent speaking. Is that what you expected? We read 16% of the time and write only 9% of the time. So we spend almost half of our communication time listening. But the experts tell us we only take in about 25% of what we hear. Only a quarter of all the things we're told we listen to. That means 3/4 of what we hear we don't listen to effectively. There's some room for improvement here, and we're going to show you how to do it. Let's look at some different types of listening. There are 3 types of listening. We call them the 3 levels of listening. Let's begin with level 3, because that's the poorest type of listening you can do. Level 3 listening is quiet and passive, mostly because people let internal distractions get to them. By internal distractions, we're talking about things like daydreaming or thinking about something else. It's letting your mind wander and paying attention to the speaker only occasionally. And when the level 3 listener does give the speaker his attention, he starts forming rebuttals to the speaker's statements. or making the speaker wrong, no matter what's being said. This is called fault-finding listening. This level of listening has an efficiency rate of about 5%. That means if we're having a conversation and I were listening at level 3, I wouldn't be able to tell you much of what you've said. Level 2 is really an interesting level because both the speaker and the listener believe some real communication is going on. Well, it's not. The level 2 listener hears your words but doesn't get the meaning or the message of what you said. One of the big problems of listening at this level is what we call the semantic barrier. The meaning of the speaker's words isn't clear to the listener. The listener isn't getting another part of the message either, the nonverbal part. We're talking about facial expression and eye contact, posture, and gestures. Why are these nonverbals so important? Our research shows us that 55% of all communicating is done in body language, 35% in the tone of voice, and only 10% is done with words. So if the level 2 listener misses those nonverbals, she's missing most of the speaker's message. Level 1 is really active listening. It's empathetic. It means paying attention to the speaker's total communication. The words, the way they're said, gestures, facial expressions, everything. Empathetic listening is a really thorough understanding of the speaker, and that's level 1 listening. Check your listening with the speaker from time to time by summarizing what's being said. By the way, this really works well when the speaker is emotionally upset about something. Working at level 1, you listen objectively and calmly. You'll keep your cool, and at the same time serve as a sounding board. That way the speaker can work out his problem. All of us listen in all 3 of these ways. Let's put this another way. Have you ever been reading a book, and when you've gotten to the bottom of the page, and you have no idea what you've just read? Well, that's level 3 reading. Level 2 reading is realizing at the bottom of the page that you got all the words, but you have no idea what they mean. But when you finish a page and you really understand what you've read, and you could tell someone else about it, well, that's level 1 reading. Most people spend 35% of their time listening at level 1, and 65% is spent at level 2 or 3. So let's get you to listen at level 1. Let's take a look at what makes a good listener. To a good listener, the speaker's message is a chance to learn something new. A good listener is busy while she's listening, summing up what she's heard and looking for that nonverbal part of the speaker's statement. Make sure you and the speaker agree on the meaning of what's being said. External distractions can be another dangerous pitfall. It can be something very small that will break your concentration on the speaker's message. The speaker's voice may not be loud enough. Ask him to speak up. The speaker may have a mannerism or a style of dress that strikes you as unusual. That's your problem, not the speaker's. Make a quick note of it, then put it aside. There may be some loud noises outside the room. Ignore them. The room could be too hot or too cold. Take your jacket off or put it on. But deal with the problem, then put it aside. There may be some kind of graphic being used that catches your attention. Refer to it only when you need the information on it. Otherwise, don't let it distract you from the speaker's message. Don't watch the clock. You may be feeling the pressure of a deadline on you. Put it aside. You'll be able to get to it after the meeting. These are all common things that could get to us. Those all-important nonverbals are also common. Let's look at what those nonverbals are. First of all, watch the speaker's face. Her facial expression could be saying one thing while the words are saying something else. The tone of the speaker's voice may not match the message. Make sure that when she says she's not angry, her voice says it too. Is the speaker holding her arms locked across her chest, as if she's holding something back? Or is she not making eye contact, as if her message weren't important? You see, nonverbals make it hard for the speaker to hide what she's really feeling. That's what makes them so important. If the nonverbals seem to completely contradict the message and you get confused, by all means stop the conversation. Straighten out any misunderstandings. Believe me, the speaker will appreciate it as much as you do. You may be too tired for the conversation. Shake it off, or delay the meeting until another time. The time lag may seem like a good chance to daydream. Be aware of this and avoid it. There's something else you bring to any conversation you're in. All your background, your experiences, and your images of people you've met before. Even the way your parents raised you. Let's call these filters, because any new information you learn is filtered through these things. Let's look at a list of filters. Memories of an earlier conversation with the speaker, whether it was good or bad. Your expectation that this conversation could be wonderful or terrible. You'll be listening for the message you expect instead of the message the speaker wants to convey. The physical environment of the meeting could bring bad memories to you, or your attitude toward the subject could be different from the speaker's. You may be prejudiced against the speaker because of age, race, sex, or religion, and a past experience with the speaker may affect your listening ability. These filters are often so much a part of us that we're not even aware they exist. It's important to recognize them in yourself and resolve them. Let's talk now about the most personal part of listening well. Get in touch with your strongest supporter, your biggest fan, and the one person who believes in you the most, yourself. When you're satisfied that you've gotten the speaker's message, tell yourself you've done well. Point out those successes to yourself, why your listening was so effective, and exactly how you did it. Keep in mind that people who support themselves believe that they have more control over their lives. Take control by knowing you're a good listener. Let's turn the tables. It's your turn to speak now. You want the listener's attention, and you want to be listened to. How do you do it? First, check your nonverbals. Be sure you use what we call a leveling position. That is, look each listener in the eye as you speak, and maintain eye contact about 2/3 of the time you're talking. Be vocally attentive. What that means is, if you're asked a question in the middle of your statement, or if someone has a statement of his own, encourage that person to speak. Someone who thinks he's really being listened to will want to listen in turn. Use positive movements as you speak. Lean forward. Nod your head when you talk. And when you think it's appropriate, you may even want to touch the listener on the arm. All these will encourage the listener to pay attention to you. Use good facial expressions. Watch that your look is non-judgmental and you're not looking stern as you concentrate. Smile at the right times for you and always look interested, both in your own material and in the people you're talking to. Know just what you want to say. It's very important that you have your information clearly in mind when you begin to speak. This is the first important step in beginning communication. Know as much about the listener as possible. Read the listener's nonverbals and get some clues on how to speak with that person. Get the listener's attention by talking about things in a way that interests her. Everyone listens more carefully to things that they find interesting. Make sure the listener understands you. That means speaking clearly and using words whose meaning you all agree on. Define your terms, if you need to, before you get started. Help the listener to remember what you've said. If you're talking about something new, tie it in with something you know the listener is already familiar with. Ask the listener when you can to restate what you've said and encourage feedback. Ask for ideas and suggestions, and from time to time, stop and ask for questions. This way you can always find out if your message is coming through clearly. Now, let's get to the content of that message you want the listener to hear. First, you must know the difference between facts and assumptions. Personal impressions aren't the same as facts, nor are your opinions exactly the same as what has actually taken place. You might make assumptions about something you've observed, like saying about someone, "She's always late," or "He doesn't care about his work." And those assumptions sound like facts, but they're not. If you get into the habit of describing exactly what you want to say, for example, saying only, "When I got to work this morning, she wasn't in yet," and you don't add your opinion, "She's always late," you'll have a lot more credibility with the listener. Let's look at you as a listener in your meeting now. You're getting the message, you're keeping your concentration on the speaker's ideas and nonverbals, and you're summarizing and making notes to yourself so you can use the speaker's message again. Look at the way you listen now and decide what you'd like to improve. Remember to keep interested in what the speaker has to say. Cooperate with the speaker by giving him your full attention. Stay neutral. Put those filters and assumptions aside. If the words of the message aren't clear to you, stop the conversation and clarify them. Use non-committal words and phrases to encourage the speaker to talk. Summarize the speaker's ideas to yourself in that lag time you have. Finally, make it easy for others to speak to you, just by showing you want to hear what they have to say. In our society, a lot of people believe that speaking is power. What you've just learned is that the real power lies in listening. You'll understand more about your life, your work, and the people around you. You can help your friends and coworkers by listening better to what they have to say. Best of all, you'll feel good about yourself and the new skill you've mastered, the skill of listening.
That was Madelyn Burley-Allen discussing how listening is essential to our success. And now, here are some thoughts from the Dean of Personal Development, Earl Nightingale.
Here's a great Eric Hoffer quotation. If we want people to behave in a certain manner, we must set the stage and give them a cue. This is true also when it is ourselves we want to induce. There's no telling how deeply a mind may be affected by the deliberate staging of gestures, acts, and symbols. Pretense is often an indispensable step in the attainment of genuineness. It is a form into which genuine inclinations flow and solidify. Well, what do you think of that? He's saying that when we want people to behave in a certain way, we must set the stage for them and give them a cue. This is the job of leadership and management, whether it's our children we would lead, our employees, or ourselves. And he said, pretense is often an indispensable step in the attainment of genuineness. It is a form into which genuine inclinations flow and solidify. Now, this is why we should be so careful before we criticize or poke fun at our children when they adopt poses or pretend. It also gives us a key to personal growth and achievement. We can actually become the sort of person we would most like to become by habitually acting in everything we do as that person would act. In time, this will be the form into which our genuine inclinations will flow and solidify, and we will end by actually becoming that sort of person and having all the things that sort of person would naturally have. This is perhaps what Goethe meant when he said, before you can do something, you must first be something. You must become the sort of person to whom the things and conditions you most desire would naturally accrue. This doesn't mean that we become poseurs or live in a world of make-believe. This is carrying things to extreme. What it does mean is the gradual reshaping of ourselves into the kind of people we would most like to become. In this way, we very gradually change our self-image, and as our self-image improves, we will begin to tackle and succeed in things we might not have dared to try as our old selves. Often when I meet a person of outstanding achievement, a mature and extremely competent person who's accomplished a great deal during his life, I picture that person as a small child. I see him at a time in his life when he was filled with uncertainties and doubts, just as we all were. How did he become so competent, so successful a person? As a rule, there was someone in his life whom he greatly admired and respected, and after whom he patterned his own life. He made it a habit to observe this person he admired and to talk, think, act, and conduct himself in all of his affairs as he imagined his ideal would. Quite often, he would accomplish a great deal more than the person after whom he patterned his early years, and in time he might even have forgotten entirely that this was what shaped his life and future, what started him on the road to growth and fulfillment. But he began by acting the part, and he grew into it. Yes, as the man said, pretense is often an indispensable step in the attainment of genuineness. It is a form into which genuine inclinations flow and solidify. Something worth remembering. A human being has the capacity to quickly become bored, and if he isn't careful, to grow stale on his job, no matter what the job may be. This growing stale capacity of people represents one of management's major headaches and challenges. And of course, it doesn't apply only to working people. It applies to every man, woman, and child. Even top executives must work to find ways of injecting new interest and excitement into their work. Frequently, a salesperson will come out of training and hit his or her territory like a cyclone. He or she becomes the company's boy or girl wonder, and the top brass begins to watch him or her for possible promotion. But all too often, the interest and excitement wear off, and the young man or woman settles down to become an indistinguishable part of the sales force. The same thing can and very frequently does happen to a marriage. It begins on a high plateau of excitement, interest, wonder, and charm, and then it soon settles down into the valley or the desert of sameness and even boredom. It grows stale and uninteresting. There are no accurate statistics, of course, on the percentage of jobs or marriages that are permitted to end in disillusionment, but I'd hazard a guess that the figures are uncomfortably high. And the same thing applies to schoolwork, housework, retirement activities, just about anything that's done on a regular day-to-day basis. As we all know, some of the world's most famous people have taken their own lives because of boredom and the lack of interest in going on, which proves there can be staleness even in stardom, even in the most glamorous of work. Well, what's to be done about it? The experts say that if we grow stale at what we're doing, no matter what it might be, it's our fault. It's a lack of imagination and a lack of understanding that staleness will always set in if we don't actively work at holding it off. So here are some staleness-fighting remedies. 1. Understand that anything, no matter how exciting in the beginning, will grow, not may grow, will grow stale in time if we're not careful. 2. Staleness must be fought off as dirt and corrosion are fought off in the home and the automobile. That is, it's a constant job so that it can't get a head start. 3. The best way to fight off staleness in your work is to realize it's the same job you were so excited about in the beginning. Nothing has changed but you. Recapture the charm and excitement you knew in the beginning. 4. To do this, look upon your work with fresh eyes. Try to change the order of things. Do your work in a different sequence and see if you can find new ways of doing it better. 5. See what you do in relation to the whole scheme of things. That is, realize how vital what you're doing is to the overall picture. And 6, if you supervise the efforts of others, if you will help them see new interest in their work, you will find a great deal of new interest in your own. Someone sent me a story from an interview with Phyllis Diller. When the interview took place isn't important, but what Miss Diller says is, Phyllis Diller was a 35-year-old housewife with 5 kids and a $50 a week part-time copywriter in a department store's advertising department when one day she spied on her supervisor's shelf a book titled The Magic of Believing by Claude M. Bristol. She read some of it, bought her own copy, practically memorized it, lived it. She credits this book with changing her life and buys the book by the case to give to friends. She says, it was this book that made me do it. It's about believing in yourself and setting your goals. If I hadn't read this book, I would never have made it. I didn't plan to be a comic. I never dreamed of having a career in show business. I didn't know anything about it. In her early school years, she was a natural comic, always getting laughs when her words came out wrong or when she erupted in an unusual-sounding burst of laughter. In college, she was a serious A student with her mind set on learning everything she could, and for a while she hoped to become a concert pianist someday. She says that although she had a good sense of humor, she always thought of herself as a very serious person. The idea of becoming a professional comic had never occurred to her until, as she put it, her husband and friends began to bug her. She says, "It was my husband who insisted that I become a comic. He thought I was funnier than those early comics on TV, and we needed the money. He kept nagging me, and I kept telling him, 'You must be out of your mind. Have you noticed the children in this house? They're ours. How much would an unknown comic earn?' I gave him all kinds of arguments. I couldn't afford to quit my job. We had to think about the children. I didn't know how to put an act together. I wasn't good enough. If someone gave me a dirty look, it would make me nervous. I had no self-confidence. Then when I read the book, it galvanized me. I found out from the book what I was doing wrong. I was thinking wrong. Negative thoughts are self-destructive. When you start to operate with the power of believing, all the bricks fall into place as though a magical hand had touched them. But the first thing you have to learn is how to develop your thinking in the right direction, and you can't do it overnight. You take it one step at a time." She goes on to say, "Negative thinkers will say it's impossible, but I don't listen to negative feedback. You can achieve any goal you want in life. You don't give up. You don't take no for an answer. No matter what your interest is, the magic of believing really works." Phyllis Diller was 37 years old when she walked on stage for the first time. Of course, she went on to become a world-famous stand-up comedian and a millionaire. She says people have a completely mistaken idea about breaks. There's no such thing as a break. If you're looking for breaks, you have your eye on the wrong thing. Life is a do-it-yourself kit. Believing in yourself completely is imperative, but success is a combination of both thinking and doing. Most people who scream for help never get it because they're screaming help. Give me money or a job. They sit around waiting for the breaks, waiting to be discovered. And they blame the world if it doesn't happen. You don't just sit on a log and wait for things to happen. You make your own breaks by getting yourself ready for the next step, the next opportunity. And that takes a lot of hard work. No one else is going to do it for you. Sure, there's someone at every stage of the game who can help you, but only if you're ready. I remember reading Claude Bristol's book, The Magic of Believing, back in the late 40s or early 50s. She's right. It's a tremendous book, and there is magic in believing. And a person can do more, live more, and have more in 5 years with it than the rest of the people can know in a lifetime without it. The mysterious element that makes people lucky is belief in themselves and in the power of belief. We all don't have the talent to make it big in show business, but we all have the talent to make it big. William Feather once wrote, "In helping others to succeed, we ensure our own success." He made a wonderful point there. In helping our children succeed at the things they're attempting, helping them with their schoolwork, helping them master their difficult, often painful social relationships, and helping them to see the relationship that exists between service and success, we automatically keep ourselves on the right track, keep ourselves doing our own homework. As we help our subordinates grow to fill our shoes, we at the same time are preparing ourselves to move up to a higher position or plateau. As we help our customers succeed in satisfying their wants and needs, in fulfilling their hopes, we most certainly assure our own success. We are here only to serve others. There's just no other reason that makes sense to me. We are served until we reach adulthood, and then from that point on, our success will be determined by how well we learn to serve, to give to others. Nations are as successful as is their history of progress and service to other nations as well as their own citizens. We have only to think of successful and unsuccessful nations to see the truth of that. Those countries that have done the most for the world, that have been most successful in serving others, are the most successful. Those that have done the least are the least successful. It's the same with human beings. In helping others to succeed, we help ourselves. We ensure our own success. People who keep wondering why they never seem to catch the brass ring and instead tend to remain stationary near the bottom of the heap have formed habits of living that largely preclude service to others. They're takers instead of givers, and takers always find slim pickings. I know some who, through wise investments, have amassed a lot of money, but they're a long way from being successful human beings. Others have also done well financially through serving others, and they have a world of real friends and loving relatives to boot. Schopenhauer wrote, "Man is never happy, but spends his whole life in striving after something which he thinks will make him so." We need not concern ourselves about our own success. We need only help others to ensure our own success.
That was Earl Nightingale. And now, please turn this cassette over to hear Emmett Miller on side 2.